Somehow, Twitch has managed to make one tiny settings toggle explain almost everything people hate about the modern AI economy. Today, creators are discovering that training for generative AI is enabled by default, meaning eligible channel content can be used for generative AI model training across Amazon unless they switch it off. Then, Twitch Chief Product Officer Mike Minton was asked why the company did not simply make the feature opt-in. His answer was almost beautiful in its honesty. If this was opt-in, nobody would opt in. There it is. That is not some angry YouTuber accusing Twitch of having bad intentions. Twitch basically explained the controversy for us. Because, if the company already believed creators would say no, why was the solution to start from yes? Maybe, you do not stream and think this has nothing to do with you. Keep watching, because this argument starts with somebody's content, moves into somebody's consent, and eventually reaches somebody's job. Meanwhile, this is not a story about Twitch secretly feeding every old VOD into some evil robot furnace. Officially, Twitch says Twitch itself is not training the generative AI models, while Minton said he did not know what Amazon may have used previously. Still, none of that removes the actual problem. Apparently, consent becomes much less attractive when consent reduces participation. First comes the content. Next comes permission. Eventually, we get to employment. Together, those three stages explain why this story matters far beyond one Twitch privacy setting. Before we get there, understand exactly what Twitch switched on. Specifically, eligible streams, VODs, clips, highlights, chat, text, images, and audio-related material may be used for generative AI model training across Amazon. Translated into normal English, you build the channel, entertain the viewers, create the clips, generate the chat culture, and some of that material may become useful training input. Unless you actively say no. Ordinarily, a company confident in its offer asks whether you want it. Twitch started from yes. Conveniently, refusal sits inside security and privacy settings under Training for Generative AI, where creators can disable it. Importantly, switching that setting off does not disable every AI-supported feature Twitch uses. Captioning, moderation, and other machine learning functions can still operate where Twitch says the information is not retained to train a new generative content model. There we are. Consent was apparently causing conversion problems. Before we continue, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and feed the YouTube algorithm its required daily sacrifice, so it briefly remembers this place exists. Naturally, discussing one giant machine now requires pleasing another giant machine first, which feels appropriate. Now comes the part where Twitch's own explanation becomes more damaging than the setting itself. Under an opt-in system, Amazon needs creators to notice the offer, understand it, and actively say yes. With default on, creators need to notice the change, understand it, find the setting, and actively say no. Behaviorally, those are completely different systems. Commercially, one obviously creates more passive participation. Perhaps this is not some secret conspiracy. Maybe it is simply maximum adoption with minimum friction. Unfortunately, the friction being removed is a human being making an informed decision about what happens to their work. Minton's quote matters because he did not say creators were confused. Instead, he said an opt-in system would get nobody. Essentially, Twitch expected the voluntary version to fail. Therefore, the company did not misunderstand its users. Quite the opposite. Twitch appears to have understood them well enough to predict their answer. What changed was who had to make the effort. Opt-in makes the company earn permission. Default on makes the creator withdraw it. That difference is the story. Elsewhere, organized opposition was already difficult to miss. A PC Gamer reported that a Twitch user voice discussion pushing for AI features to remain optional and off by default had gathered nearly 14,000 votes and 228 pages during the backlash. Granted, that is not a scientific poll of every streamer alive. Even so, 14,000 organized votes are slightly more useful than pretending nobody objects until a vice president discovers anger on a dashboard. Ownership adds one more awkward question. Live streams can contain copyrighted games, music, artwork, guest voices, and viewer messages created by people who never touched the streamer's privacy settings. Industry analyst and indie developer Mike Futter publicly raised concerns around game footage. Nobody can honestly jump from that question to, this is definitely illegal, because that has not been established. Yet, one creator clicking one setting clearly does not simplify every right attached to everything appearing on screen. Apparently, modern ownership now works like a buffet. Developer makes the game, streamer broadcasts it, viewer writes the joke, and everyone gets to wonder who invited the training model. More importantly, the stakes do not stop with VODs. Today it is a streamer's archive. Tomorrow the same argument can involve writing, voices, artwork, performances, game footage, or any other human-created material that becomes valuable training input. Here is where Saber Interactive enters the story and raises the stakes. First we had content. Then, we had consent. Now we get to jobs. Former lead writer Stella Sacco alleges that she worked on Rideshare, Stimulator, and was replaced by ChatGPT during development. Directly, Saber denies her account. According to the company, the main story was written by humans. Its writing staff has tripled since 2023, and no Saber or Unigen writer was replaced by AI. Fair enough. Evidence does not allow anyone to declare Sacco's allegation proven, simply because it makes for a more furious thumbnail. However, Saber also confirms that Rideshare includes an experimental free ride mode, using generative AI to produce an effectively unlimited supply of passenger interactions. Suddenly, the dispute becomes more interesting than accusation versus denial. One side says a writer was replaced by AI. The other says that did not happen, while confirming that AI performs writing like interactive work inside the same project. Those facts can coexist without proving Sacco right. Predictably, Matthew Karch then arrived with the corporate equivalent of a petrol can and a box of matches. Reportedly, Saber's CEO said he had to ask Claude who Sacco was, because he had never personally spoken to or seen her. Afterward, Karch said she had been replaced by someone more talented, and later terminated for other reasons. Finally, he added that, in retrospect, he would have been happy to replace her with AI, and suggested an AI would at least be programmed to be honest. Spectacular. Corporate communications departments spend years teaching executives what not to say. Apparently, Claude had the day off. Notice what Karch's statement does not prove. It does not prove Sacco was actually replaced by ChatGPT. Rather, it proves something more relevant to this discussion. A major gaming executive publicly described AI replacement as an acceptable outcome, after denying that this particular replacement happened. Management can say AI is merely a tool. Public relations can insist nobody was replaced. Leadership can still openly talk about replacement as something perfectly acceptable in principle. Try telling a writer not to worry after that. Steam adds one final transparency problem. Valve requires developers to disclose generative AI content players consume, including live-generated systems. At the time the controversy erupted, Rideshare's public Steam page did not show the expected AI disclosure. Saber said that information would be added once the feature set was finalized. Therefore, calling the company a proven Steam rule breaker goes beyond the evidence. Criticizing the communication does not. If the feature is important enough to defend after controversy starts, why was it not obvious enough to disclose before people started asking? Curious. Herein lies the connection between Twitch and Saber. These are different companies dealing with different disputes. Neither case proves AI itself is some demonic villain. Both expose what happens when companies gain something by reducing human resistance. Operationally, Twitch benefits when participation happens automatically and refusal requires action. Economically, Saber can benefit when generative systems create more interactive content at greater scale than handcrafted writing alone. Companies naturally want efficiency. Platforms want participation. Executives want scale. Investors want lower costs. Creators want control. Workers want security. Players want disclosure. That is the conflict. For once there is even something worth praising. Generative systems could make free-roaming NPC conversations less repetitive. AI-assisted captioning and moderation can also be genuinely useful when implemented transparently. Creatively, those tools may support experiences traditional scripting cannot economically deliver. Nevertheless, useful technology does not magically produce fair incentives. Companies still collect the upside. Somebody else still manages the risk. Creators still search for the setting. Workers still wonder which task disappears next. Customers still ask what exactly they are buying. Consequently, AI good versus AI bad is a useless argument. The meaningful question is who controls the system, who profits from it, and who absorbs the consequences. Ultimately, Twitch's own explanation gives us the clearest answer to the why. Creators were not defaulted into this system, because Twitch had absolutely no idea how they might respond. Its own product chief suggested an opt-in system would attract almost nobody. In other words, asking first created a participation problem. Default on reduced that problem. Mystery solved. Likewise, Saber shows why the labor side becomes explosive. Managers see scale. Writers see replacement pressure. Leadership sees efficiency. Employees see uncertainty. Publishers see experimental features. Customers see disclosures arriving after questions begin. AI did not invent these conflicts. Technology simply makes them faster, cheaper, and harder to ignore. Want the simple answer to why companies keep doing this? Because permission creates friction. Friction reduces participation. Reduced participation limits the value companies can extract from systems that become more useful when more material, more automation, or more work flows through them. That does not require an evil conspiracy. Ordinary corporate incentives are enough. Twitch effectively told us as much when its own executive explained why opt-in was unattractive. Saber then shows where the same incentive becomes much more personal. Efficiency sounds wonderful until the efficient thing being discussed is somebody's livelihood. Supposedly AI is an incredible opportunity for everyone. Strangely, these opportunities keep becoming easier to sell when the humans supplying the work do not have to actively agree first. Check your Twitch security and privacy settings if you do not want eligible channel content used for Amazon's generative AI model training. Remember that disabling this setting does not disable every AI-supported Twitch function. More importantly, stop treating inevitable as another word for acceptable. Consent matters because silence is not enthusiasm. Disclosure matters because finding out later is not transparency. And when a revolutionary technology needs default switches, buried controls, delayed labels, and executives explaining why almost nobody would volunteer, perhaps the most revealing feature is not the AI at all. Arguably, it is the assumption that your silence counts as agreement. Apparently, the future does not need you to say yes. All it needs is for you not to find the opt-out button.